like you haven't hit the abyss either. Well, regardless of that, I still can't forgive you for trying to kill my sister, Miri. After that we see that, Yu Ilshin is sitting on his chair in his apartment saying, looks like I never got the chance to meet Mina, why is she so busy? Well, I guess it's hard for a top celebrity to make time. Forget about that. Looks like the Sword Master finally went home. Yu Ilshin read Sword Master's letter and thinks, please don't come back. After that message popped up on his Godmaker app, he opens the Godmaker app saying Godmaker. What's going on? Message says, the human, Johann, has been converted to the order of Yu Ilshin by the god of destruction. Johann is considered a fanatic. Yu Ilshi say, Johann, that weird pervert. Wait, why? Then a quest window appears saying, quest, lower rank good god advancement in progress. Normal follower. 5,212,326. Follower with intelligence and potential to reach beyond S calls. 1 out of 10. Yu Ilshin says, wait, he should be beyond S class. I don't know what's happening, but that's 2 birds with 1 stone, this is perfect. The Sword Master left, and I have an S class follower. What happened to Johann? Another message popped up saying, the fanatic of Yu Ilshin Johann has died. He is shocked to see that message and says, what? Then there's no point in gaining the new S class follower. Why did he die? Another message popped up saying everything a fanatic owns is the property of the god. The sacrifice will be absorbed. He died, but he was absorbed. What's going on? Then a lot of warning messages popped up. And one of the warning message said, absorbing the sacrifice may result in excruciating and numbing pain. He screams with pain. After that he thinks, did I just absorb Johann's abilities? You could have told me this nicely, you damned game. So even if a fanatic dies, I still absorb their abilities. How did Johann die? Did he really die? Then a news appear in his phone saying, mastermind of the black market, found dead due to heart attack in prison. He says, although his name wasn't announced, the mastermind of the black market is Johann. He checks high mission progress, it is still saved. He says, I don't know if it's a concern or a relief, but my mission progress is still saved. Along with absorbing Johann's ability. I got berated with good information when I wasn't expecting it. But what caused Johann to become a fanatic? And to die suddenly due to a heart attack? Although he died, I still kept my progress. And since a follower of the god of destruction died, should I be glad? I don't understand. He is a bad guy, right? Let's stop thinking about this. It's all over anyways. What should I know? I can do anything. With all the authorities I have now, I can become a hunter and gain money and glory. But that's not what I really want. Yeah, I'm a writer. Even if I'm a third-rate writer with no work, you get the best results when you're motivated. A few hours later, he says, I should get enough attention since I uploaded 10 chapters at once. Since it's all based on my experience, it should be interesting. This should attract more fanatics. Let's see what the comment section looks like. He gets a lot of bad comments. He gets demotivated and says, let's try to find a different job. Then someone knocks the door. Who is it? I'm not expecting anyone. Is it the Swordmaster? You idiot. I swear, if it's him, I'm going to say something. Why are you back? I'm going to kill you. When he opens the door he see that it's Miri and she is on her knees saying, teacher please. Can I ask for a really difficult favor from you? Yu Ilshin thinks, look at those sparkling eyes, how could I even try to turn her down? I wouldn't be human if I said no. He says, sure. A message popped up saying the faith of Earth Apostle Seong Miri has risen by 10. He thinks, I just agreed, and her faith went up by 10. But what kind of favor is it? She gets excited and says, as expected of teacher, you're the best. Yu Ilshin thinks, I'm getting weirdly nervous. Then we see that, the next day they arrive at Hunter Academy. He says, you want me to be your guardian, as a substitute for Yuani. She says, that's right. He thinks she's had too many unexplained absences, so her homeroom teacher called in her guardian. Why isn't her sister? Yeah, I kind of see why. So her faith didn't just go up by 10 for nothing. She says, but teacher, you look really good in a suit. Why not always wear something like this? He says, sorry. I only have this one suit. She says, should I buy you one? I have lots of money. He reply, no, don't waste your money like that. I don't have a reason to wear one. Then I'll buy you a designer suit, at the very least, since we have to show off teacher's coolness to the whole world. He thinks, Miri's tendency towards fanaticism is somewhat similar to aunties and black ghosts. Now, let's go quickly. Otherwise, we might be late for the meeting. You're right. One of the teacher asks Yu Ilshin, pardon me, but what is your relationship with Miri? She says, he's my older cousin. Teacher says, he's your cousin but he looks nothing like you. Yu Ilshin thinks, I just said what Miri told me to says, but did I get caught? Miri says, no way teach, no, Oppa and I look totally similar, though. He thinks as expected, her lie was way too obvious. She says to teacher, take back what you said about our Oppa being ugly. He says, no, but I never said anything like that. Yu Ilshin thinks, judging by his good evolution, this person probably isn't just a normal guy either. That being said, he has a name that really suits his muscles. Teacher says to Yu Ilshin, I apologize for my bad manners, I thought Seong Mina would be coming. Well yes. Teacher says, but are you also a hunter? You must also be very talented, since you share the same blood as Midi. Yu Ilshin say, sorry, me no I'm just an ordinary person. After that we see that old man is saying, so much time has already passed. After that we see that a gate is appearing in the middle of the city. One of the soldiers says, damn it. Of all places, a gate appears in the middle of a city, and no only that but right above an elementary school. And together with a devil ogre that could wipe out the entirety of Korea. It's an S-rank sovereign monster devil ogre. One of the soldiers says, is there anything the hunters can do? As expected it's an opponent that even hunter can't handle. One other soldier says division commander over. There. After that we see that a man punched the monster with a powerful punch. Monster falls done to the ground dead. One of the soldiers says, the hell, did he manage to defeat the devil ogre, an S-rank sovereign monster, all by himself? What kind of crazy? I've never seen the hunter before. If he's this strong, he must be S-rank, but where did he come from? We see that the old man is saying, I'd continuously tried to live quietly, but because of that bastard, my entire world changed. It was from then that people started to call me Choi Kangson, the sweeper. But I'm too old for that now. I have to dig deep at this academy to discover and foster new talent. That is my duty. But our academy's biggest problem is Seong Miri. Not only has she grown dramatically recently, but only the upper classes of the association know that she's actually quite coddled on the inside. It's important that we make it possible for her to grow in an orderly fashion. In today's meeting, I'll have to tell her properly. Then, she might come to her senses. He says, you're a writer. Yu Ilshin think, what? This feeling that I'm somehow being looked down upon. I may look like this, but reading is actually a hobby of mine. May I ask what sort of things you write? I'm currently writing a story about raising an ant with a mobile phone. There's a saintess ant, a muscle ant and so on. Teacher says, it seems we've arrived, this is the principal's office. Teacher knocks the door of principal office and says, sir, student Seong Merit and her guardian have arrived. Please, come inside. Yu Ilshin says, hello, sir. I am Seong Miri's cousin who has come here as her guardian. He says, I don't know what Miri has done wrong, but... Principal replies not at all. Then suddenly both of them pointed toward each other and said, wait. Yu Ilshin says, this bastard is... No, this person is that drunk from before. He's definitely S-rank hunter Choi Kangson is the sweeper. Principal thinks that this bastard is from back then. No, there's no way. There's no way that guy would be here. Yu Ilshin says, drunk hung. That's you, right. I'm glad to meet you again like this. Yu Ilshin thinks, nice since it's someone I know, this meeting might finish quicker than expected. Principal gets scared and says, don't come any closer. Yu Ilshin says, sorry. I'm just happy to see a familiar face. Teacher thinks, why is the principal suddenly being like this? Let's stop him for now. An ordinary person would die after a single hit. Yu Ilshin says, no, but why are you being like that? Seong Miri stands between them and says, sir. What are you doing? Principal says, you don't know anything, so stay still. We don't know when a monster will appear. Teacher thinks, I don't know what he's talking about. But to think the principal could be this scared. No, more than that. Who exactly is this cousin of Miri's? Yu Ilshin says, are you really going to be like this? When I even gave you 5,001 back then. Principal turns around and starts to run. Yu Ilshin says, you don't have to give the money back. I won't say anything about it. Principal jumps from the window and start to run away in front of everyone. Yu Ilshin with an angry face says, what's with him? Teacher says, were you surprised? Allow me to apologize on his behalf. Seong Miri says, the principal's really fast. Teacher says, it looks like something wrong happened up here after he saved people last time. It's an occupational disease, I guess. Yu Ilshin thinks that. I don't think he was quite sane when I first saw him though. I'm sure he'll come back soon. After that we see that everyone is drinking tea. Yu Ilshin thinks, why is he staring so intensely at me? After that a message popped up saying the human follower Seong Miri has given Yu Ilshin a tribute, Choi Kangsan's favorite snack. Yu Ilshin thinks, Choi Kangsan's favorite snack. This can count as a tribute. But seriously, why is he staring at me like that? Is it because of the snack? Come on, there's no way. Yu Ilshin stands up and says, sir, is there something you'd like to tell me? If needed, we can go somewhere private to have a conversation. Principal's body shakes with fear. He says, no, there's no need for something like that. Sit, let's all have a conversation together. This is horrible, how am I supposed to counsel? Teacher says we decide to call you today because Miri has been skipping class on a regular basis. As you can see, she's a bright and sincere student. Therefore, we suggest that you keep a closer eye on her to ensure her success in school. Yu Ilshin says, yes, please don't worry. I'll be sure to take care of our Miri more. Teacher says, thank you for coming during your busy schedule. He says, no worries, of course. Please take care of Miri for me. Teacher thinks, looks like we should end things here. Yu Ilshin says, that's all, I'll be taking my leave. Teacher says, of course. Principal says, no, I can't let you leave like this. Do you understand how long I've spent looking for you? This is destiny. Yu Ilshin thinks, what the hell is he talking about? Principal says, our Hunter Academy is equipped with the greatest of equipment. Let's go and conduct a couple of tests. Come with me. Please do this for me. Yu Ilshin says, why should I? Principal says, I'm begging you. If you take the test, I'll do anything for you. Yu Ilshin thinks, now that things have come to this. Yu Ilshin says, if you forgive all the Miri's absences, and stop forcing her to participate in training, I'll think about it. Principal says, deal. Teacher says, Principal, this is. Principal says, shut up. This is the perfect opportunity. After that we see that Yu Ilshin is standing inside a glass tube. Female doctor says, don't you know this is excessive? An ordinary human being conducted for hunter testing. Principal says, it's just this one time. It's very important. Doctor says, the previous test showed that he's AG rank. What about that is important? Principal says, there's something like that. After that we see that, Yu Ilshin is standing in front of a glass ball. A message popped up saying, Orb of Selector, currently in the possession of the Hunter Academy, used for 20 days. Characteristic, used as a tool to gauge the abilities and strengths of a human, often used to differentiate between followers and sacrifices. Yu Ilshin thinks, the Orb of the Selector, this should be an item being sold for millions of won. It has the ability to differentiate followers, too. I have a bad feeling about this, but I can't tell why. Doctor says, to start the test, please put your hand on the orb. Yu Ilshin puts his hand on the orb, it emits bright yellow light and stops immediately. Doctor says, the test is over, please come out. She says, impressive. Yu Ilshin gets exited and thinks, impressive. What does that mean? Finally, do they recognize my greatness? He asks, what rank am I? He thinks, B, A. Or maybe since I am considered a god S rank. She says, AG rank. From you health to intelligence. Everyone is shocked to hear that. Principal says, there's no way, are you sure there isn't something wrong with the machine, Yunbi? Yunbi says, the results produced have a margin of error of 0.1%. Miri says, Yunbi. The two of them, were they that close to each other? He says, they're related. Yunbi says, Principal, I'd prefer if you'd call me Manger Choi at work. Principal says, alright fine. Yu Ilshin thinks, but seriously. Even if I'm lower ranked, I'm still a god. Can that machine not measure the powers of a god? Principal says, are you really sure? Is he really AG rank? Yunbi says, I'm sure Principal. Principal thinks that's odd. Then that day, how did he do that? I was sure that he passed out on the rooftop. Now that I think about it, he must be the type that needs to pass out to show his powers. If that's the case, I just need to put him to sleep myself. Yu Ilshin says to Miri, wanna get something to eat on the way back? She says, yeah, alright let's go. Principal gets ready to fight and says, no, I won't let you. Yu Ilshin says, what now? Principal says, spar with me. Show your skills off to me. There's no way a machine like this can do anything. Yu Ilshin says, why should I? It's not like I benefit from this. He thinks benefit. Maybe. Both the Sword Master and Johan become fanatics after fighting me. Maybe if I can teach this old man a lesson, I can get that S rank follower that I need for the advancement quest. Yu Ilshin takes off his coat and says let's go. Everyone else is shocked to see that. Principal laughs and says, perfect. Let's all go to the sparring room then. Teacher says, I'll be the one to fight. To have Korea's legend, our principal, fighting in a situation like this, I don't think it's quite appropriate. After that we see that, teacher and Yu Ilshin are standing inside a ring ready to fight. Yu Ilshin touches the cage and thinks, it looks really sturdy. So this will absorb the energy from any and all skills. Really? Teacher says, are you really not going to wear any protective armor? Yu Ilshin says, but you're not wearing any either, though. Teacher says, there's a difference in experience. Between me and you, Hyungnim. Yu Ilshin says, it's fine. I don't want to wear any either. Teacher with angry look in his eyes says, you might regret it. Principal says, don't be careless. Janook is a top D ranker, not only that, but he has lots of experience in real-life fights, so he could even manage to take on a rank hunter. Yu Ilshin says, is that so? Seong Miri cheers him up says, Oppa you can do it. Finish him in a single blow. A lot of people gather around the ring saying, looks like teacher Janook is going to spar. It seems like they're doing a recruitment test for a new teacher. Yu Ilshin says, no, why are you all coming here? Teacher says, let's finish this quickly before it get even noisier. Yu Ilshin say, shall we? Then you can attack first. Teacher thinks that attitude of his that doesn't even care about the difference in ranking. It's really pissing me off. I don't really know what the principal sees in this guy. But I'll show him properly what it means to live as a hunter. Teacher says, well then I'll begin. He throws a powerful punch at Yu Ilshin. But Yu Ilshin barely dodges it. Teacher is shocked to see that and thinks, he dodged. Although, I did pull my strength back at the last minute. Is this beginner's luck? But this is the end of that luck. I'll finish it. He hits Yu Ilshin on the face with a powerful punch. Yu Ilshin is standing still, a little scratch on his face with finger up in the air. He uses his God's crushing forefinger on teacher. It hits the middle of the head of teacher. His nose starts to bleed and some his teeth fell out as well. He falls on the go-round thinking, impossible, Amir G rank is beating me, AB rank. Yu Ilshin thinks, what the? Isn't he AB rank? Then aren't I at least in a rank at this point? Seong Miri says, Oppa as expected, you're the best. Principal also says, yeah as expected. A newbie watched all this and said, he definitely felt like an ordinary person. Yu Ilshin thinks he alright. After that principal gets into the ring and says, you should fight me too. Principal takes off his shirt, he is a big muscular man. Yu Ilshin thinks, I'd really prefer not to fight that beefcake. But if I can make the drunkard Hyungnim a believer, won't that be even more beneficial? In their end it'll be even sweeter. Principal thinks, somehow, I feel annoyed. In any case, to think that he would destroy teacher Janook like that. As expected, the machine was broken. But, compared to his acolytes that day, this is nothing. I'll have OT make him pass out. Principal says, my blood is pumping for the first time in a while. Then, shall we start? Yu Ilshin says, before we do, let's make a bet. A bet. The loser has to listen to the winner's single request. How about it? Principal says, as long as it isn't illegal, it's fine. Since I'm still a public servant, It won't be anything weird. You just have to do one thing that I request of you if I win. Principal Thin's look at this brat. He's really that sure he'll win. Even if he doesn't become a believer after I win, I'll have to say the keyword like I did with Miri. Principal says, okay, I'm not sure if that's possible, but alright. If I win, then you have to do me a favor as well. Yu Ilshin says, okay. Let's do it. That's not a problem, since I'll win regardless. Principal says, good then, and does a power up. His body is covered with dark blue lightnings. Yu Ilshin thinks drunkard Hyungnim really is no joke. Then I'll gather all my power too. His clothes shriek to pieces. And know they are standing in front of each other ready to fight. Principal says, as expected, it really is you. Miracle's words were right. Yu Ilshin says, by miracle, do you mean the S rank hunter Yeji? Principal says, that's right, she said that soon, the most brutal and most honorable being would appear. Yu Ilshin thinks wait, now that I think Aobit it, brutal and honorable. Was she talking about evil and good God? Miracle is really incredible, isn't she? Principal says, she said that if that being ever appeared, I should affiliate them with the Academy. Yu Ilshin says, the Academy. Principal say, that's right. Yu Ilshin THNKS, I dunno, I still have to write a novel and be promoted. I'm busy too, you know. Principal jumps toward him and punches him in face. Yu Ilshin blocks his attack with his fist. Principal says, let's continue to check whether you or the beaten and Principal are fighting with each other. Both of them are throwing powerful punches at each other. They hit each other in face at same time. Seong Miri and everyone else is shocked to see them fight. Yu Ilshin see an opening and hit the Principal with a powerful kick. Principal cough out blood but hold himself together and hit Yu Ilshin with a powerful kick on the same spot. Yu Ilshin grabs his stomach because of the pain. Principal says, you punk. As expected, you're great. Yu Ilshin thinks, he's S-class. But I can do it if I try. I haven't used my full power. Principal says, you have to win and make sure you enter the Academy. Even if I have to use my full power. Yu Ilshin gets ready to fight again and says, no thanks. Here I come, and jumps toward Principal but immediately stop himself and sees Principal activating his full power. Everyone is shocked to see him use his full power. Someone in the audience says, it's the Principal's full power. Loot at his fists, which swelled up like a gigantic balloon. Shouldn't we stop them? Even if Yu Ilshin is a teacher, this is too much. We have to stop them. Both of them jumps toward each other. And as their punches are about to hit each other, a message popped up saying, Ilho has overcome the trial of flowers on the 11th floor of the Warrior Tower. A faithful believer and your temporary apostle, Ilho is offering you a tribute. Yu Ilshin thinks, what? At this moment, figures. Every time one overcomes a trial, a tribute is offered. For now, let me knock down Choi Kangson then check it. Choi Kangson smiles and thinks, I should at least break an arm. Then their punches hit each other. A huge shock wave appears. Then suddenly some flowers appears on his hand. He thinks, what is this? Is this perhaps a tribute? He throws the flowers and says, come on. A tribute right now. Principal sees the flower and thinks about what was happened before. After Principal break the cage and run away crying like a baby saying, Mom save me. Principal thinks, I haven't collapsed yet, but still the monster. Yu Ilshin sees him and thinks, what's with him? Does he have allergies? He thinks, wait, doesn't this mean that I won? If that's so, then that homeless man is my believer now, right? He checks his phone and thinks, I haven't received a message saying he's become my believer yet. Then, as expected, I have to say the keyword. Auntie summons him. He thinks, for what reason am I being summoned? Then a message popped up saying, an additional 4,210,221 non-believers want to enter the city. Will you accept them and show your grace? Yu Ilshin gets really excited, and I can't believe the number of believers is increasing on its own, so the quest is going smoothly. Seong Miri see toward him with proud and everyone see him with surprised faces. Yu Ilshin thinks, let me go somewhere quiet for a while. Then a message popped up saying the development is taking effect, the city's walls are being doubled. Additional homes are being constructed. Congratulations, the numbers of believers have increased. His number of common believers crossed 10 millions out of 1 billion that he need. He says, well, for now, I've expanded my territory in accordance to the increased number of believers, but at this rate, how am I gonna reach 1 billion believers? Ant see he frustrated and thinks, it looks like it's an spell from God Ilshin. Auntie Anne. Another ant gets excited and says, maybe it's a spell from God. She gets really excited and say, God's spell. Auntie says, dear God Ilshin. Ilshin says, what are they up to again? Aldian says, great and merciful Ilshin, the start say a bad starting with F. Ilshin says, I guess this is what they mean what they say don't just spout things in front of kids. Ilshin keeps walking and says, well, that's that. Anyways, I wonder where our principal is. Then he see toward he phone and says, what is it this time? He gets surprised to see that and says, what? After that we see that Sword Phantom is about to kill himself. A message popped up saying, God Ilshin, will you save you believer Sword Phantom from committing suicide? He says, a suicide crisis. Ishin teleport to him immediately. Sword Phantom sees toward Ilshin with a crying face and says, Sword God. Please save me. Ishin grabs the dagger from his hands and throws it away. Sword Phantom is relived. Ilshin gets angry and says, what came into you, and why are you killing yourself all of a sudden? Sword Phantom says, no, it's not like that. Ilshin senses something and says, you're not trying to kill yourself. Then the masked woman appears behind them and says, you just almost killed yourself. Masked woman says, for sure. I didn't sense anything. She thinks where the hell did he come from? Sword Phantom says, Sword God. You can't let your guard down. That guy over there is using a strange technique. If you try listening to his voice manipulation, you'll know that he's not an ordinary pervert. Ilshin says, what? She gets angry and says, a pervert. Ilshin recognizes her and says, he's not a guy, and he's not a pervert. Sword Phantom says, pardon. What do you mean? Ilshin says, what are you doing here, Seong Mina? Sword Phantom thinks, Seong Mina. Why the hell is Seong Mina doing that to me? He sees her status window. She says, Ilshin says, as I said before, I have sensing skills, so. Sword Phantom thinks, even then. As expected, the people that the Sword God meets are on a different level. She removes her mask and jacket. Sword Phantom see her and says, you're pretty. Sword Phantom thinks I can't believe such a goddess-like beauty uses evil tricks. I can't be blinded. She gets angry and says, don't make me laugh. This mask uses in a class cover-up magic. A sensing skill can break through an item like this. Sword Phantom says, an overwhelming energy. It does not affect Ilshin and he says, well, aside from that, what are you doing here? She is shocked to see that her power has no effect on him. She gets really angry and says, of course, I'm here to kill that punk. Sword Phantom gets scared and Ilshin says, you're going to kill the Sword Phantom. Sword Phantom says, Sword God, of the 10 people I told you about the other day that I can't kill. One of them is her. Ilshin sees toward him and Sword Phantom, tell me honestly. Aren't you actually weak? He says, anyway, I don't know what's happening but can't you just forgive him? He may look lacking, but if you know him, he's actually a poor guy this guy is nice. She gets really angry a lot of lighting starts to come out of her body and her eye starts to glow in other words she looks really awesome and she says, you want me to leave the guy that tried to kill my little sibling? Ilshin thinks, as expected she knows. He says, if that's the case, then shouldn't you let him live? If you really can't let it go, all responsibility and surrender. She says, I don't know what you're deluding yourself in, but great timing, if you have that sorted out, then. He says, pardon. She says, you're next in line. He is surprised to hear that and say, what? Why me? She says, don't act innocent, Johan said you name too. He says, if it's Johan then. She says, I already know that you're behind all of this. He is confused and say, I am. She says, for what purpose did you approach Miri? You pretended to save her, currying her favor. What the hell are you up to? He thinks this is really infuriating. What is she conspiring? He says to her, then, let me ask you a question as well. If you really cherish your sister so much, why did you seal her ability away? She thinks, this human. How did he? Is it because of his sensing skill? As expected, he's dangerous. I should kill him. I am just want say something to my viewer. I am listening to music while working on this video and I am laterally getting goosebumps at this scene. Then we see that Seong Miri tied in the chain. A message popped up saying, blood seal. Note, Seong Mina, cursed by the abyss, is risking on sealing her own life. Miri's seal, which could not be solved no matter how much skill is used, belongs to Seong Mina. He says, no matter how much I think about it, I don't get why you have to risk your life for a seal. Perhaps you're jealous. Because your sister is much better hunter, you had to cut her off. She gets really angry to hear that and says, you don't know anything, so. She uses her ability Kaie Declaration of Apostle. And says, don't talk nonsense. He is just standing there. Sword Phantom brings out his sword and says, Sword God. And jumps toward her to attack. She stops Sword Phantom with just a single flick of her finger and says, you're nothing but a bug. He falls to ground and cough out the blood. Yu Ilshin see that with a surprised look on his face. He thinks, what the hell is this crazy ability? She just flicked him. He says, Sword Phantom, are you okay? Sword Phantom says, you should be careful, Sword God. He says, there's actually a rumor that Seong Mina is not an S-class but a double S-class. He gets scared and thinks a double S-class. I on the other hand, am just a G-class, so just how strong is she? And red energy ball appear in her hand and she says, I'll stop. G ball hit him in the heart. Sword Phantom scream and say, you can't die. Yu Ilshin looks toward him and says, please, shut the hell up. It's just a little ticklish. She is really shocked to see that and says, what? Sword Phantom gets happy and says, as expected. He feels a relief and says, I can live now. She is shocked to hear that and thinks, just ticklish. I gave it my all this time though. Where the hell did he come from? She says, I'll admit that you're better than I expected. But if you think that my ability is only mental manipulation, then you're mistaken. She bring out her full power, her body gets surrounded by blue energy. Sword Phantom gets up and pick up his sword and says, it's a crisis. It's an absolute crisis. Sword Phantom says, Sword God be careful. As I've mentioned earlier, Seong Mina may be double S-class. She flies high up and creates a big red energy ball. Yu Ilshin thinks, officially, the highest calls of Korean hunters is S-class. But if what the Sword Phantom says is right, then she's much stronger than that homeless guy. No, she's incomparable to him. She activates her ability and says, burn. He says, what? A huge fireball comes toward them. The fireball hits the ground and explodes. They are barely able to dodge the fireball. Yu Ilshin arm gets a little burn. There is huge hole in ground in front of them. Yu Ilshin thinks, in addition to the mental manipulation skill, I can't believe this kind of attack skill is possible. She's really trying to kill us, probably not, right? She creates a big blue energy and says, you rats. I haven't even started. He thinks what? She's really serious. He blue ball become really big like a boulder. She throw it towards them and says, freeze. Sword Phantom become a frozen statue. And Yu Ilshin's only ankles are frozen. He thinks she can use attack skills freely. Is she a mind hunter? He wait mind. Right, this is. He breaks free. And says, Sword Phantom, these are all just hallucinations. It's all fake. She says, yeah, you're right. My ability is in the mental realm, and all of these are just illusions. But did you know? Perfect illusion is no different from reality. She picks up a lot of rocks and create a huge boulder using her power. A boulder as big as a big mountain. Then says, even if this is just an illusion. If this kind of illusion is imprinted on your body, you guys will die. She throw the boulder towards them, and if you don't want to be destroyed like this, reveal your identity and purpose. Even if I tell her, she won't believe me, but I'm a third-rate writer. Even answer gods. Right now, I'm focusing on turning Miri into an S-class hunter. So I don't know what's going on. But please release Miri. She says, what? Since you want to die, you've gone crazy. If you really want to die that much, then die. Sword Phantom gets really scared and says, Sword God. She says, you bugs. Yu Ilshin uses skill sharing. He says, strong body. His clothes gets ripped to shreds as he hits the boulder with a powerful punch. She is really surprised to see him. His punch hit the boulder and break it into thousands of pieces, and a shock wave hits Seong Mina. She thinks. He received it with his strength. That's insane. Sword Phantom breaks the ice and says, as expected of Sword God. Yu Ilshin says, I said it was hallucination and didn't believe me. Look, you're still frozen right now. Sword Phantom bow down and says, I'm sorry, Sword God. Yu Ilshin says, you're overreacting again. She says, impossible, that guy is just AG rank. Sword Phantom says, please forgive my blasphemous sin by cutting my open. Yu Ilshin punches him and says, stop talking shit. Yu Ilshin says, just stay still. Since I have something I need to do first. Yu Ilshin jumps toward her. And says, Faculty Hung Nim, will you listen to my words now? She gets scared and says, he's fast. She jumps backwards and says, what do you think you're doing? She tried to use a skill again. He says, no, but why are you ignoring me? She uses space thinking. Some yellow and purple lights hits Yu Ilshin. Yu Ilshin falls backward. He in a pure white space and says, where the hell am I? He is inside that peculiar space. There was a sturdy yet soft floor. And pleasant smell that made you want to close your eyes. He says, for some odd reason I feel good. There was nothing present, but somehow, I could almost hear the insects on a warm summer's night. Together with the thought that I could achieve everything I Eve wanted to. He says, I feel like I could do anything. Then suddenly that space turned black. Some sparkling thing starts to fall from the sky. He sees that and says, it's beautiful. Seong Mina says, you really pissed me off. She uses another skill. He suddenly remembers that he was fighting her. She uses endless deep swamp. He gets surrounded by water. He starts to drown. She says, you're finished now. Give up. He raises his hand and uses God's crushing forefinger. His skill doesn't work. She says, don't worry. He says, what? She says, you won't die, so don't worry. But if you get sucked in there, you'll become a vegetable, and you'll never be able to escape. He starts to cry and say, isn't that the same thing? She steps on his face. He thinks, no, stay calm. This place is just a hallucination. She says, this is seriously your last chance. Tell me. He says, no, but tell you what. She says, who are you? What's your goal? He blushed and says, that's Seong Mina's. She says, good, so you're in the mood to talk. He says, it's not that, I can see it. She says, what? He reply, I can see you panties. They're white. Her face red and she jumps back. He thinks this is why you don't wear a dress and step on someone's face. She gets really angry and says, just die. He fully drowns. He thinks, I'm sleepy. But I can't fall asleep. I didn't even hear why she sealed Miri. I'm so sleepy. You have met the condition for the enlightenment of the rose that blooms at night. He thinks, I don't know why. But I feel like I'm going to have a good dream. She says, I didn't get to find out. I thought he would have some relation to the Nether Dragon. I didn't end up finding out his identity. But I did remove a future risk. I guess I'll go back to reality now. Then Nightmare Flower comes out of the water. She sees it and gets really scared and thinks, what the hell? Nightmare attacks her left and right. She dodges all the attacks. And thinks, what the hell are these things? There are a lot of Nightmare Flowers and they all get really big. She thinks, they're bigger than earlier. How can something like this be in my thinking space? It's a place no one can enter without my permission. She thinks, could it be? That bastard. We see that Yu Ilshin is sleeping on a big rose just like a little baby. He thinks, so cozy. I'm sleeping but I want to sleep even harder. Then we see that Seong Mina is barely able to hold herself together. She is injured. Damn it, all I can do is dodge. Have I ever felt so helpless before? The difference in power is too big. This is like the horrors of that day. She falls and says, no, I can't die like this. Nightmare Flower grabs her. She says, no. As the Nightmare Flower is about to eat her, she says, please. I still have things to do. I can't die before I get my revenge on the Nether Dragon. After that we see that she is crying and says, before I get my revenge. Seong Mina disappears. We see that Yu Ilshin is standing in middle of a destroyed city. He says, this place is. Where am I? I was definitely fighting Seong Mina. Then he sees a big yellow light. He uses Blind God's Eye ability. A projector is running. A message popped up saying Yu Ilshin is observing Seong Mina's nightmare. He says, I was able to see way Seong Mina sealed Seong Miri's abilities. Seong Mina's nightmare began 15 years ago. We see a huge red dragon is destroying everything. The Nether Dragon, which was dubbed the worst monster of all time, was the cause. It ate hundreds of people in one breath. And even ate Mina and Miri's parents. It ended up branding the two sisters. The Nether Dragon had seen the enormous potential in the two sisters and branded them with the purpose of using them as sacrifice. Thanks to the seal, Seong Mina was able to become an S-class hunter. After becoming an S-class hunter, she lived with the sole goal of avenging her parents. There were rumors that the Nether Dragon had died. But she did not believe that and thought the Nether Dragon would come back someday. However, the dragon's curse did not let go of Seong Mina. Her power might have grown exponentially, but it cut her lifespan. It was obvious that at this rate she would not live long. A curse that allowed her to grow powerful faster but also cut away her lifespan. The problem was that she wasn't the only one with the curse. Seong Mina tried to undo the branding, but there was no use. She instead chose to cut her lifespan more in order to seal her sister's ability. She would at least stop her sister from becoming an S-class. Yu Ilshin starts to cry and says, "I didn't even know." Then a message popped up saying, the mentality of Seong Mina, who has been eaten by the rose that blooms at night, is breaking down. The thinking space that has imprisoned Yu Ilshin is being destroyed. Then we see that he come back to reality and Sword Demon says, "Sword God, are you okay? You weren't answering me, I was worried." Then Sword Phantom says, "What are you gonna do now?" Seong Mina is laying on the ground. Sword Phantom says, "Are you gonna sell her off to the Hunter Association?" He runs towards Mina and says, "Mina, Seong Mina, wake up." He says, "Thank God she's not dead." She opens her eyes. Yu Ilshin says, "Seong Mina, are you hurt anywhere?" She says, "Mama," and hugs Yu Ilshin. Seong Mina is sleeping inside a house in a forest. Yu Ilshin says, "Damn it." He tries to use healing ring finger but it doesn't work. He bring out his phone and says, "Stalkers, are you watching? What should I do to cure Seong Mina?" Perpetual Truth Seeker says, "A strong body will cure anything she needs to train her body." Yu Ilshin says, "No. Rejected. Next please." All Cutting Sword of the Heavens says, "If she's gonna die anyways, why don't you just offer her to me as a sacrifice?" Yu Ilshin gets angry and says, "I didn't expect anything from you in the first place. Please get lost." All Providing Richness says, "If you become a high-tier god, you'll be able to cure her with the power of God's healing ring finger." He says, "I'm barely reaching a low-tier god, let alone a high-tier god. I'm rejecting this one as well. Hold on, I don't really recall this, but whenever I lose my consciousness after I get my ass beat, the rose that blooms at night always appeared. So all of this happened because rose that blooms at night activated while I was unconscious. Could I be a genius?" He gets really excited and says, "Am I right, Nightmare? Why don't you say something?" Soundless Nightmare says, "If she ate it already, there's nothing that can be done." He says, "What? Does that mean I have to just leave her at this state?" Soundless Nightmare says, "There is one way." He says, "Oh really? So you're telling me that I gotta sleep with her? That's the only way? Really?" A message popped up saying Soundless Nightmare vigorously nods its head. After that we see that she is sleeping on the bed and he is sleeping on the floor right beside her. He wakes and says to her that, "You should sleep under the sheets." He starts to walk away. She says, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm gonna prepare breakfast. You don't mind rice, right?" He says, "There were no sexual implications included when Soundless Nightmare said that I had to sleep with her." She acts like a baby and says, "Food, I like food." He says, "Just like how water flows from a high place to a lower place, her memories that I swallowed will flow back to her as a dream. Which means, I just have to share my dreams with her in the same space. It seems to be working too." He says, "Well then, let's check if you're okay. What's your name?" She says, "Seong Mina." He asks, "What's your favorite thing?" She says, "Miri, my sister." He asks, "What's your least favorite thing?" She gets really scared and says, "I'm scared of flowers." He says, "I've only managed to get her mental age back to that of a child's. Because of that, I've been lacking sleep in." She says, "I'm sleepy, I'm going back to bed." He says, "I've become a kidnapper." He checks the news. Everyone on news is saying that S-rank hunter Seong Mina have been kidnapped. He thinks, if she returns to the public like this, I'm so gonna be cancelled. I should keep myself hidden until Seong Mina somewhat comes back to her senses. I'm deep in the mountains, so I guess they won't find me so easily. But first, I should let Miri know. After that we see that Sword Phantom is training outside of the house. Yu Ilshin comes out of the house. Sword Phantom sees him and says, "You're awake, Sword God. I bid you a good morning." He asks him that, "Is your training going well?" Sword Phantom says, "Of course. The swordsmanship book that you have gifted me is a thing of wonder. It is a revolutionary sword style that breaks all stereotypes of swordsmanship." He thinks, "The heavenly sword of Cheon Ma. Of course I bought it at a high price to train you." He thinks, "I initially thought that lower god rank up quest would be impossible. To be honest, how the hell am I even supposed to make 1 billion believers and 10 S-ranked followers?" He grabs his head and says, "My head." Then a message popped up saying, "Your S-rank and above followers possibility of transcendence have increased by 2. Added, Ilho, NT. Sword Phantom says, "Sword Saint, are you alright?" Yu Ilshin thinks, "I don't know how hard they've been training in Entria, but Ilho and NT have become S ranks. Which means that Sword Phantom has a chance to become one too. Since there's almost no chance that an S rank hunter would become my follower, I'll turn my followers to S rank." Sword Phantom is confused to see him. Yu Ilshin thinks, "And that's why I invested 20 million god coins to buy that sword book. That sword just came with it." But he reads book. It says, "The ultimate swordsmanship is abandoning the sword itself. Rise above humans, sever the sky, and finally, cut down the mountains. To tell the truth, my fists are stronger than my blade." He gets really angry after reading this and thinks, "It really looks like I've been scammed. But the items that I bought from the 1000 blade can't even buy refunded." He thinks, "Yeah, let's just drop my expectations. Let's just use batches. Potions are the best for growth. This was extremely effective on Ilho, so it should be effective on Sword Phantom too." Yu Ilshin says, "Drink this while you train." Sword Phantom bow down and says, "Thank you, Sword Saint." Yu Ilshin thinks, "This guy, he's watched too many historical shows." Yu Ilshin says, "Alright, then. I'm going to make breakfast, so you should continue with your training." Sword Phantom says, "No. I should be the one to." Yu Ilshin says, "Just do what I tell you to do. It'll help me more if you become stronger." Sword Phantom says with tries in his eyes, "I will make sure to live up to your expectations, Sword Saint." He sees his phone and thinks, "What should I cook for breakfast?" Yu Ilshin says, "Let's see, are there any good recipes?" He see a breaking news saying, S-rank hunter Baek Yu-yeon warns the terrorist kidnapper, "If you dare to even touch her, I'll twist your neck off." He gets scared and says, "Twist my neck off." Something fall from the sky behind them. It's a hunter. He says, "Where's my Mina?" That hunter's name is Baek Yu-yeon. Yu Ilshin and Sword Phantom gets scared and says, "You're Baek Yu-yeon." Sword Phantom gets angry and says, "How dare you? Do you have any idea who this person is?" Baek Yu-yeon says, "Who is he?" Sword Phantom points towards him and says, "He is the mighty Sword Saint." Baek Yu-yeon says, "Sword Saint? What's that?" Sword Phantom says, "I'm disappointed in you. The famous Baek Yu-yeon has the eyes of a child." Yu Ilshin thinks, "Hey, Sword Phantom, I'm starting to get embarrassed, so please stop. That Mina girl that you've been looking for has already lost to the Sword Saint and has become unable to live without him." Baek Yu-yeon get really angry and says, "Unable to live without this bastard? If it's what I think it is, you'll all die here." Sword Phantom starts to laugh and says, "You fool. You do not recognize the true strength. Please rest here, Sword Saint." Yu Ilshin thinks, "Just shut up. Please." Sword Phantom says, "I'll take care of that man." Yu Ilshin thinks, where is his confidence coming from? You're up against an S rank. Sword Phantom jumps toward him and says, "Die, you amateur." Baek Yu-yeon takes out his sword, and burns the Sword Phantom with a single touch of his sword. Baek Yu-yeon disappears in front of his eyes. He grabs Yu Ilshin from his neck. Yu Ilshin thinks, "Fast. This is teleportation." Baek Yu-yeon says, "Where is Mina? What was that crazy bastard talking about?" Yu Ilshin feels the presence of Red Dragon and thinks, "This is A big red dragon appears behind Baek Yun. Yu Ilshin says, the red dragon, the essence of Baek Yun's sword. Baek Yun says, you bastard, what have you done? He raises his sword and says, answer me. Yu Ilshin thinks, hot. My face is gonna get burned, let's put off the flames first. He uses God's crushing forefinger on the flames. Baek Yun says, how dare you point at me? Baek Yun gets scared and unable to move and says, I can't move. Baek Yun says, what kind of skill did you use? Yu Ilshin says, vanish. And points toward the dragon behind Baek Yun. The dragon covers his eyes. His flame starts to disappear. He looks behind him and says, what the hell? His sword starts to break into pieces. He gets really scared and says, my sword of the dragons. Is this you doing too? Yu Ilshin gives an evil smile and says, what? Why don't you let go of my neck first? I'm still really warm because of the flames formed just now. I'm weak to heat, you know. Baek Yun says, what? What did you just say? Yu Ilshin says, I know you heard me. Sword Phantom up and thinks, he defeated Baek Hyun so easily. He's amazing. Mina wakes up and comes out of the house and shouts, shut up. She gets angry and says, Mina can't sleep because of how loud it is. Baek sees Mina and says, Mina. You're okay. She sees that Baek has grabbed Yu Ilshin's neck. She points toward Baek and says, bad person. Mina uses a laser beam and says, die. He goes flying and falls to ground. He coughs out a lot of blood and says, Mina. Why are you attacking me? Mina hugs Yu Ilshin and says, Miri, are you okay? Baek is surprised to see that and says, what? She says, I'll protect you from the bad person. Yu Ilshin thinks, if you suddenly hug me like that. Baek starts to cry after seeing that and says, Mina. He says, I almost called her Unnie. And, if these two really are dating like the rumors says. I'd wanna die if I were in his shoes. A girlfriend who can't even recognize her and regress to her child self. I'll let this one go since I feel bad for you. He uses God's healing ring finger. Baek says, I've been healed. Then a message popped up saying calculating principle of cause and effect of the opponent, Baek Yun, being healed. He may be an 8th place low-ranking being, but he possesses the possibility of transcending. Yu Ilshin thinks, possibility of transcending. 100 G coins will be used in exchange for the healing. He thinks crap, 100. Sure is pricey for an S class. Yu Ilshin thinks, no. This is an opportunity for me to increase the number of S class followers I have. Look at those eyes. He looks like he'd give me his liver if I asked. He might become a follower if I do well, I'll have to try. Baek says, did you just heal me? This amazing healing ability. Even the S-class healer I met in South America wasn't this good. Yu Ilshin thinks, I'll build a good relationship with him first. Yu Ilshin says, Baek Hyun, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'll explain the situation. Then some helicopters appears on the scene. Yu Ilshin thinks, what? I guess he wasn't alone. Yu Ilshin asks him, did you come with your subordinates? Baek says, no, I came alone. Yu Ilshin thinks, he wouldn't lie in this situation. So who are those guys then? There are a crap ton of them. Is there a reward for my head? Is it the Hunter Association's investigation team? Whoever they are, they've made things real annoying. Some of them jumps from the helicopters. He thinks there sure is a lot of them. He sees the principal on one of the helicopters, and thinks, the principal. But what's with his face? News, does he also think I'm a kidnapper? He sees that Miri is also there. Mina gets happy to see Miri, and says, it's Miri. He thinks, how do I explain this? They're definitely gonna misunderstand the situation. He told them the story truthfully and brought up the ceiling of Miri. Miri starts to cry and says, so that's why she did that. They both huge and she says, she risked her life to protect me. Mina says, Miri, don't cry. Why are you crying? Doctor gave Yu Ilshin, a B class awakened license. He says, but why? She says, you're G class by measurement, but with the principal's guarantee and the flower monster you summon. Mina and principal both get scared by only the mention of the flower. She says, you were able to obtain a B class license. Because your ability to summon creatures was highly valued. Yu Ilshin thinks, monster flower. Creature. Rose that blooms at night. Principal says, so, would you consider working with me? You can be an academy professor if you're AB class. Yu Ilshin says, why would I do that? He thinks, I have to raise my ants and write my novel. I also have to raise S-class devotees. I'm a busy man. Principal says, I can give you double the usual initial salary. Yu Ilshin says, how much? She shows him the amount on a calculator and she says, this is the estimated amount if I add the principal's special sum onto the initial salary. Yu Ilshin sees that and thinks, what? How many zeros is this? There's too many. Yu Ilshin says, I'll do the professor thing. Actually, my dream's always been to be a professor. When should I start? After that we see that in classroom of Miri, a girl comes near her and says, you look like you're in a good mood. Did something happen? Miri says, yeah, someone really special's coming today. Yu Ilshin comes to the class looking like a zombie. All the students says, who's that? Someone says, look at that seating. He's the one who sent Mr. Janook flying with just a punch. Then who's with him? Sword Phantom is also there with them. Yu Ilshin says, hello, everyone. I'm Yu Ilshin. I'll be your substitute teacher. While your homeroom teacher's out. Everyone start to says, what? All of a sudden, Sword Phantom hit the ground with his sword and says, everyone, silence. I'm the assistant teacher, Sword Phantom. He looks towards students with an evil look and says, you should consider it an honor to be taught by the great sword god. Yu Ilshin says, really? Then let's just self-study. Yu Ilshin thinks, I need more sleep. My room's already small, but with Choi Kangson and Baekyu Hyeon. Sword Phantom picks up his sword and says, don't make a sound from now on. Anyone who dares to interrupt the sword god's slumber, my Dragon Fang will not forgive. Student says, Dragon Fang. That's the sword's name. That's so childish. The energy he's emitting is at least a class. Let's just shut up and study. After that we see that the next day, he says, it's almost finals, right? Then should we self-study? The day after that, he says, geez, it's raining. We should self-study on days like this. The day that comes after that the weather's so good today, let's self-study. One of the students thinks, what's wrong with him? Why have we been self-studying for 4 days in a row? When he's awake, he's playing some stupid game with ants. How is he a teacher? After that, he is sitting with the